worked overtime to save my family from bankruptcy, and when I found out my mother secretly borrowed thousands from loan sharks without telling anyone, I had to figure out how to protect her without losing everything we built together. I am 34, male, and live in Chicago, though I grew up in a small Iowa town. My parents, Thomas age 62 and Ruth age 59, were working class all the time. We were not rich, never quite, but we were secure, had our routine, our little pleasures. I have a younger sister, Lila age 28, who lives in Denver and works in the tech sector. I was always the responsible child, the one who had to hold things together when things imploded, which they always seem to. It was never more clear than the year my dad had a minor stroke. My mom lost a huge chunk of her freelance business, and here we were, on the brink of serious financial distress. I was 34 years old, holding down 2 jobs, one at a small marketing firm and nights driving for a rideshare company to make some extra cash. I was getting by, just keeping the bills paid, grocery shopping, and praying that nothing terrible would occur. Then I found out, by sheer dumb luck, that Mom had taken thousands of dollars from some loan shark she had met through a so-called friend, without anyone's knowledge. I was at home scrolling through emails from a money management app when her name appeared with a list of overdue reminders that I had not signed for. I was shocked. Our mother, who always cautioned us about spending money wisely, had secretly accumulated massive loans. I was sick, rage and panic entwined, because I could see exactly where this was headed if I didn't move fast. I didn't know whether I should confront her then, or quietly organize a strategy to rescue the family. The thing is, I understood Mom. Ruth isn't hasty. She dreads losing control and hates feeling helpless. I realized later that she probably took the money believing she was doing something reasonable, trying to correct things I hadn't even known were wrong in the first place, like paying off old bills or keeping afloat some small family investments. Loan sharks don't care about reasons, they care about cash, right now. And the longer it dragged on, the more it would hurt. I called Lila the next morning, but it was early and I guessed she'd be grumpy at being woken. She's practical, intuitive, and never lies. Mom's in trouble, I said to her, trying to keep my voice level. She's stolen money and I don't know how much yet, but it's bad. Lila waited before she said anything. We need to go visit her and discover how to fix this before it blows. That was my thinking, but for her to tell me, put it in perspective. I didn't want Mom to feel betrayed by me standing up to her, but I also couldn't let things spiral out of control. The risk of losing everything we'd spent all those years building hit me like a train. I wasted the remaining hours digging through bank documents, credit report, and even reading through messages in her phone, feeling embarrassed but so hungry to understand what we were facing. All the figures made my belly churn. Thousands here, thousands there, interest accumulating faster than I could keep track. And I realized that this wasn't about money. It was about trust, about my mother feeling alone, about the family she'd worked so hard to protect. The emotional weight of it almost paralyzed me. I lay awake at night, imagining what a confrontation would be like. Would she beg, cry, or rage with fear? I remembered one evening in my teenage years when she had hidden a letter from Dad about overdue bills she did not want me to know about and be upset. She'd always done that for us, making sacrifices behind closed doors, something that I had always admired but now wished I had completely understood then. I just kept thinking, if only I could find some way to save her without breaking everything apart, then maybe I could actually manage to keep our family afloat. But how? I'm one person, working 2 jobs, trying to get my own life organized, and here was Mom, juggling debts that I didn't even know existed. I remember pacing back and forth in front of the apartment, making up worst-case situations, working through all the what-ifs, and still feeling so powerless. At some point, I realized that worrying was not going to fix this. I needed a plan, a step-by-step plan to stop the loans from ruining her and, consequently, all of us. And so, that's when I began writing lists, notes of every potential resource, every contact or friend who could be of assistance, every means to make money quickly. Some were desperate ideas, others unimaginable, but I eliminated none. Anything was preferable to nothing. I also knew I had to be honest with Mom, nicely, diplomatically, so she'd understand we weren't angry at her, we were scared, and we'd work it out together. The thought of fighting with her frightened me more than anything else because I didn't want her to get embarrassed, yet I knew fighting reality was inevitable. That night I could not sleep again, though I could not stop thinking of her in her kitchen alone, probably wondering if her kids would hate her for what she had done. I wanted to hold and comfort her and tell her everything would be okay and start cleaning up this mess before it ate us alive. I had no idea at the time, but that was only the tip of the iceberg. The loans were merely a symptom. The harder task would be to walk through the emotional wreckage, repair trust, and determine how to save the family I love from a disaster I never could have imagined. I had to learn how to protect her, and somehow, me, and maybe even learn something about forgiveness and sacrifice along the way. I went out to Mom's the next morning, my hands on the steering wheel tightening up tighter than I realized. Ruth, aged 59, was humming a gentle tune in the kitchen, doing dishes as if all was well. I resented the serenity it made me feel like a fool for overreacting, but I was also scared because I knew she was hiding the truth right before my eyes. I coughed to clear my throat, and she looked up, sporting a wary smile. "Good morning, honey." "Coffee?" she asked. I nodded, struggling to keep my voice even. "Mom, we have to talk," I said, fidgeting with my keys in my pocket. She did not respond at first. She just set the cup down, wiped her hands, and gestured for me to sit. That instant, sitting across from her at the creaky wooden table we'd had since we were kids, I saw how much she had aged. Not years I'd always understood she was dyeing her hair. Her hands aged, but in a kind of gentle weariness, as if life had gently worn her down where I hadn't realized until this moment. I saw some advertisements, I started, and she flinched a little. Her eyes went wide, and for the first time I saw the fear in her, not of me, but of what would occur. I didn't want you to worry," she said, her voice cracking. I could feel the lump rise in my throat. I needed to scream at her for lying, but I couldn't. I understood. I really did. I swallowed hard and tried to remain calm. "Mom, it's not a matter of blame. We have to get this straight before things get worse." She nodded, tears brimming, and I knew this was going to hurt her. She pulled out a small heap of papers from the pocket of her apron, loan agreements, payment calendars, and scraps of paper with scribbled teeny handwriting. "I didn't know what to do," she whispered. "I didn't want Dad to know. I thought I could master it, but it spiraled out of control." I lay back, trying to understand it. Thousands of dollars, compound interest, a missed deadline, and she'd done it all by herself, keeping us afloat, not knowing that she'd risked everything on a storm. I was angry, frustrated, and sympathetic. "Okay," I said slowly, taking a deep breath. "We can fix this. But we have to be honest, Mom. With everyone else we have to include. Secrets won't save us." Over the course of the next couple of hours, we itemized everything what she owed, who she borrowed from, what we had in assets. I offered to dip into my savings, sell my car if necessary, work more shifts. She shook her head, shame written on her face. "I can't let you do that," she said. "That is my mess." I knew that what she really meant, she did not wish to be a burden upon me. But I also knew that if we failed to do something together, this could get too late to be modified. That afternoon, I called Lila again. "We need a strategy," I stated. "We're not paying this off for nothing. We need to protect Mom from these individuals." Lila, being practical as always, began making a list of possibilities. Rolling over debts, negotiating with creditors, even speaking with someone who was familiar with legal loopholes in predatory lending. Some of the suggestions worried me. I didn't want to make Mom feel like we were exposing her ignorance, but I also understood the pressure. I could see her, sitting quietly in the corner, hands clasped, looking at us as though she was waiting to be condemned, and I wanted to reassure her she wasn't in trouble, that we were battling for her. At night, we had an escape plan. I'd work overtime, Lila would tidy up some paperwork from home, and Mom would attempt to get the lenders to extend. I exhausted myself just thinking about it. We were actually trying to climb a mountain with bare hands, hoping the ropes would hold. And in the meantime, I couldn't help but notice how fragile our family balance was. Make one move, take one step wrong, and it could all come crashing down. I stayed at Mom's, half to mind her, but also because I didn't want to go back home alone with my anxiety. We took tea in the living room in silence. Finally, she spoke. I didn't want to drag you all into this scandal. I put my hand over hers. Mom, you've always looked out for us, even when it hadn't been smart. But now it's our turn to look out for you. We're doing this. She smiled through her sobs, and I knew that somehow she got it. And I could see that even though this was so terrifying, this too had brought a strange kind of clarity. Family wasn't about habit or blood. It was about showing up, even when you mess up, even when there are repercussions. We would figure this out somehow. I didn't know how yet, but for the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead was enormous, but at least we were going to tackle it together. And that, I realized, meant more than anything else. This was just the first day of the war, and I knew the next would test our patience, our belief, and the very honor of our family. But sitting there, watching Mom take a sip of tea and breathe a little more normally, I swore in my mind. No matter what, I would do everything I could to protect her and keep us from losing it all. During the following weeks, the pressure was nearly unbearable. I started getting up at 5 a.m., working late into the night, keeping 3 jobs and still feeling like I was on a treadmill and hadn't moved an inch. Mom, Ruth, did her best to keep the negotiations open, but the loan sharks were unwilling to relinquish. Driving home one day from a 12-hour shift, I got a call. The line was answered by a voice that was cold, brusque, and clearly amused by my terror. "Inform your mother that we'll be dropping by shortly," the man told me. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly what dropping by equated to, and I had no choice but to try to keep my wits about me while I planned my next move. I put down the phone, gripping the wheel so hard I was certain I'd dent it, and I was thinking frantically. Could I afford to pay someone to take my place? Could I send money in time? Could I keep my mom safe and clear all this debt without losing the house? I was feeling so helpless, like I was caught in the midst of a hurricane with no shelter. That night, I barely slept, pacing back and forth in the apartment as Mom tried to sleep, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the arm of her chair. I could not bear to look at her like this. I begrudged the fact that my parents, who had given me everything, were now relying on me to clean up from a mess they never wanted to create. I knew I had to play it smart. I called Lila and we planned to liquidate some of the small investments Mom had in her own name, small amounts she'd accumulated over the years, kept mostly in certificates of deposit and a mutual fund she never drew from. It wasn't enough to cover everything, but it would buy us time. I also called a college acquaintance, Ethan, 36 years old, who had a background in finance and some attorney referrals. Ethan was eager to help, but cautiously, warning me this was no joke. Mom and I met with one of the lenders the next day. I disliked it before we even arrived. She grabbed my hand as we walked into the small, depressing office, her fingers icy and rigid. The guy behind the desk, resplendent in a cheap suit and permanent grin, looked us up and down like we were cattle. He slapped the forms down on the desk. "You owe and interest is accumulating," he stated. I fumed. Rather, I forced myself to breathe, keep calm, and negotiate. Mom stayed silent, head dropped, and I knew she was pleading with me to make this right, to save her from humiliation. I manipulated the numbers, asked for extensions, emphasized her payments record, and tried to stall. The man did not smile again. He sat back in his chair, skeptical. But eventually, he finally consented to a short extension, and I felt so relieved that I was shaking. I drove home, glancing over at Mom in the passenger seat. She had said not a word, but I could tell the weight was easing just a little bit off of her shoulders. Later that evening, she shared something that made my heart sink again. "I didn't tell Dad or anyone else anything because I was afraid they'd hate me," she said in a whisper. I didn't want to be responsible for everything we lost. I took her hand in mine and squeezed it tight. Mom, we're not going to hate you. We just want the truth. Secrets kill families, and we're better than that. We can get through this together. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, overtime, and endless calculations. I even considered asking my old roommate, who now owned a small business, for a loan to cover the final hunk of cash, though I hated getting someone else involved in our fiasco. But Lila urged me to seek help. That evening, after a 14-hour day, I fell onto the couch beside Mom. She was working on some knitting, a ritual she'd maintained since I was a child, and I couldn't help but think that watching her now like this, vulnerable, tired, but still persevering, made everything feel so high stakes. I recalled when I was a teenager, secretly saving money from my parents to buy something tiny that I desired. I'd guilt-tripped myself, but at least my mistakes hadn't had the potential for violence. These loans weren't like that. They could have ruined all we'd worked for. I didn't sleep any that night either, ruminating, going over every probable outcome. I knew we were balancing on a high wire and one error would have us tumbling. And yet there was something else, a sort of purposeful feeling. I'd always known responsibility, but this was a test by fire, and I'd have to step up to the plate, not just as a son, but as an individual my family was counting on. And at the back of my mind, I couldn't help but wonder what life would be like once this was all over. Would I still feel the same as Mom? Would there ever be trust again? Or would it be forever precarious? I didn't have the answers, and I didn't know if I ever would. But for now, I had to weather the storm, and that consumed every hour, every dollar, and every carefully guarded word count. I would fight for her, even at the cost of sleep, sanity, and peace of mind. And I knew that sometimes love isn't soft or gentle. It's raw, drained deep, and scary. It's surviving when you don't think you can, and appearing when all the odds are against you. I wasn't certain if we were going to be able to get through intact, but I did know we had to try, because the other option was losing all that we'd created and letting fear and shame win. And I couldn't let that happen. Not for Mom, not for me, and not for our family. The next weeks were like a lifetime packed into a couple of days. I would awake in the morning with a lump in my stomach, never knowing what issue would hit me first. Another lender's request, a forgotten bill, or Mom breaking silently under pressure she fought so hard to keep hidden. Things slowly began to level out, step by step. Mom was able to negotiate extended deadlines, Lila helped us restructure the finances, and I worked myself through all the extra shifts I could get, sleeping sometimes only 3 hours solid. There were moments when I felt completely defeated, lying in the dark awake, wondering if I was doing it, if I was working fast enough. Mom would quietly sneak into the room from time to time, climb onto the bed beside me in silence, and simply hold my hand, as if the contact could somehow explain why I was struggling. There were battles too, many explosions of fear and anger, both of us, but more so me. She'd cry silently in the corner, bemoaning how she had botched everything, and I had to help her remember that we were not going to let this tear us apart. One night, after the last payment on the loan had been made with the combined resources of Lila, my overtime, and Mom's savings, we sat in the living room, the quiet nearly deafening. Ruth, age 59, looked at me through a mix of relief and fatigue that I'll never be able to erase. "I thought we were done," she said in a whisper. I shook my head. "No, Mom. We fought and we prevailed. You didn't ruin anything. We just had to work together." She smiled faintly, and I could sense the weight finally coming off her shoulders, the pressure that had kept her so tightly wound for months now slowly unfolding. That evening, I finally slept without fear gnawing at my insides. I replayed it all in my mind. The fear, the sleepless nights, the endless planning, the moments when I thought I would fail. And I realized something important. The loans, the failures, the close calls had revealed the truth of our family. Mom, in her fears and failures, had had the strength to go on, Lila and I had had the courage to intervene when it mattered, and I had had the grit I didn't know I possessed until it was summoned. Not only did we endure the financial terror, we learned to recognize trust, integrity, and assistance with no conditions attached. I doubt any of us will ever forget those weeks. Mom still gets nervous from time to time, but we talk about money, worries, and mistakes more openly. Lila and I pay closer attention to each other, ensuring we share loads before they become emergencies. And me? I've learned responsibility isn't about you doing it all alone. It's about facing reality together, even if it terrifies you. Sitting in that living room, months down the road, with bills finally under control and the shadow of the loans gone, I knew family isn't perfect. We screw up, we hide, we freak out. But we also forgive, we protect, and we rise up together. Mom's smile that evening, tired but genuine, said it all. She wasn't alone, and neither was I. And maybe that's the lesson I'll carry forever. Love isn't always soft or easy. Sometimes it's raw, it's exhausting, it's terrifying. But it's also the thing that can save you, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. We had survived the tempest, and although it had scarred us, it had also toughened us, made us wiser and closer than we had ever been. Life would never be perfect, and there would still be new obstacles, new fear. But for the first time in months, I believed we could overcome anything. The house remained that night, the air serene, and I could finally talk myself into believing we'd made it through. Mom slept soundly, and I remained at the window, staring out over the city lights, feeling the weight transfer from my shoulders, knowing that whatever lay ahead, we would make it through it together.